If we want to save this country, we need to abolish the Federal Reserve Bank. As you guys know, over the last week or so, a few banks have gone belly up. One of them was the Silicon Valley Bank on the West Coast, and another was Signature Bank on the East Coast. It turns out that it was the raising of the interest rates that essentially put them under. And that's bad that the Federal Reserve Bank didn't see it coming, or didn't warn anyone if they did see it coming. It does look like the CEO of the Silicon Valley Bank saw it coming and sold $3.6 million worth of his shares a few weeks before the downfall. There are a lot of people talking about this issue, but I haven't heard anyone point out that it's the Federal Reserve Bank's fault because they're not actually doing their job. At least, the job they were created to do. The Federal Reserve was created to stop bank runs, not start them. And it was never created to determine national interest rates and use that to control the economy. New World Economics describes it like this, quote, "The idea was that the discount rate, which is the Fed's interest rate, would be set well above the prevailing rate. In practice, this might be about 10%. Thus, nobody would borrow from the Fed during normal times. However, if there was a liquidity shortage crisis like 1907, the rate on overnight loans would rise above the discount rate, and the Fed would make loans. These Fed loans would increase the monetary base, thus adding liquidity and resolving the liquidity shortage." End quote. In a capitalist system, the market should determine the rate at which lenders would make loans. But instead of letting the market determine the interest rates of the day, the Fed took control, and it's been a huge mistake. Now, why was the Federal Reserve created? Because after the panic of 1907, where the stock market crashed by 50% and a bunch of runs on banks happened, there was a safeguard wanted. They wanted a way to stop bank runs from happening, and the solution was for this new bank, the Federal Reserve, to provide liquidity when there's a shortage. Of course, just a little more than a decade from its creation, the Great Depression happened, and what did the Fed do? Not their job. They let it happen, and then government created the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Check out what the late great economist Milton Friedman said about this.
The Federal Reserve System was established to prevent the bank runs and bank failures that happened during the Great Depression. But they made it worse, much worse, by not doing what they were setting up to do. They were supposed to provide liquidity, and instead they reduced liquidity. The quantity of money in the United States fell by a third between 1929 and 1933. The Federal Reserve System at all times during that period had the power to prevent that decline. And it was established for the purpose of preventing that from happening. It didn't do it. And so what happened? The Federal Reserve System wasn't abolished, unfortunately. But the Federal Deposit Insurance was created to do what the Federal Reserve System had been supposed to do, to prevent bank runs.
He's right. The FDIC was created because the Federal Reserve Bank didn't do their job. And this might be unpopular, but their job was to use quantitative easing, which can be a good thing if it's used to stop a catastrophe. But when it's used to allow the government to spend trillions of dollars it doesn't have to artificially prop up the economy, it creates much bigger problems. Remember, in 1929, we were only $300 billion in debt, and that's in today's money. Some inflation from quantitative easing to stop the Great Depression would have been a preferred outcome. Today, however, we're in debt almost $32 trillion. That's 106 times more than the debt we had in 1929. Not only did the Fed not stop the Great Depression from happening back then like it was supposed to, it was their interest rate hikes that caused the bank failures this past week, along with some mismanagement, I'm sure. It's almost like the Federal Reserve Bank wants the smaller banks to go belly up. I'm not sure that's the case, but the fewer banks there are, the more powerful the Fed becomes. And we should all be very scared where that could take us. Look, the Federal Reserve Bank wasn't created to control our economy. We have a capitalist system, and that should include letting the market decide what the interest rates of the day are. It's important for the market to go through its cycles and not be propped up with artificially low interest rates when things are a little slow, or vice versa. The Fed should have been eliminated a long time ago, after they failed us during the Great Depression. But it's never too late to do the right thing. I don't know if you know this, but we're not even allowed to audit the Fed. They're already so powerful that we just have to take them at their word about what their books look like, while you and I got the IRS asking us about something we sold on Craigslist. I'm serious. If we want to save America, we need to abolish the Federal Reserve. And that's the simple truth.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. And if you all want to support this channel, check out the links in the description, and let's keep putting some common sense back into the great debate.